Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your hosts, Jake and Scott. In this week's episode, we head downtown to Angel's Envy to hang out with our good friend Owen Martin. So sit back and buckle in to the latest episode of the Bourbon Lens. Owen, third time's a charm, man. No one else is going to see all the other stuff, but you saw it. So, outtakes are great, right?
Hey, third time's a charm.
All right. So, Owen, it's good to see you again. Last time we tried video for the first time in person, and guess what? Video didn't capture. So this time we actually
now we get to see Owen.
Well, now we get to see Owen.
Yeah.
Hooray!
But Owen, it's a big next 10 days for you. This podcast will come out sometimes later.
Yep.
But you will be celebrating Father's Day potentially with the birth of a new child.
Yep. These, what we got in the next 10 days, we have basically 3 releases, so to speak. We're bottling both of our special releases for the fall, not on account of my personal life, but because we're about to do a big bottling shutdown for the next couple months. And then the third release, the most important one being my second daughter here in, about 10 days.
Oh man, that's exciting. It'll make Father's Day a little bit more special this year.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm hoping newborn in arms, watching some World Cup. Life's good.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly sleep deprived, I imagine, but hey, one day at a time.
Hey, for sure. So let's talk about the World Cup, because the U.S. will kick off today as we sit here and ponder Angel's Envy whiskey. What's the expectations for the U.S. national team this year?
I mean, the man in the jersey, I think, should answer first.
I don't know. It's going to be a tough one. There's a lot of strong teams this year, so I just hope they survive the group stage. And
I'm optimistic we can make it out of the group, but I'm not expecting much past that.
Yeah, so I was reading this thing on ESPN as of today. There's this whole list of 13 criteria that knocked out every team but the United States from a NASA mathematician.
I saw that same article. I didn't read it. My clickbait senses were going off, and I was like, maybe I'll read this later. But
it was worth the wake up at 6:30 when the big thunderstorm went off this morning and read it. It was very interesting. Some very particular things had to have happened. Like no 40-year-old star has ever won a World Cup, so they eliminated Portugal off that because Ronaldo's 41. But it'll be very interesting to say the least. I think they make it out of group, but and needless to say, it's going to be a really fun couple weeks.
Love it.
Yeah. So let's talk about, what's going on with Angel's Envy. It's been a kind of a banner year for you all as you released your 10-year-old whiskeys, quotes, because you'll present why we're saying quotes here in a second.
Sure
but we are going to do a little bit of a deconstructed tasting of the rye, which is this year's kind of, big aha, right? Because the bourbon was in the fall, the rye was the big aha for the spring. So let's talk about the rye first, and we can hit on the bourbon on the back end, that little thing.
Sure. Yeah, I love it. This is sort of the second piece of the fall cask strength bourbon release. So that was the first age-stated Angel's Envy period, the first age-stated cask strength, certainly. So that one was some 7-year bourbon with some 3-year finishing time in port, some 9-year bourbon with some 1-year finishing time. Basically, all the finishing time in the years range, right? Extended secondary maturation. And so, as you might imagine, our oldest barrels, they're just turning 10 this fall. And so when I talk about last fall's release, then that was 100% sourced bourbon, just trying to be very transparent about that. So this year we want to do the double release because we're moving the bourbon back to majority our own distillate. So we dropped the age statement on that. And again, we'll get into that one after this, but we wanted to continue the age statement with the rye. And so kind of similar idea. And what I think feels unique to us and appropriate is that our age statement encompasses the time in a finishing cask as a very finish-centric brand, obviously. And so what we have in front of us is some 6-year rye with a 4-year rum finish to take it past the 10-year mark. And then the second piece of the deconstructed is some 12-year rye with I think it was a 4-month rum finish. So basically younger rye, very long finish, again, secondary maturation almost, and then older rye, shorter finish. And from a blending perspective, then you can kind of hit exactly the spot you want to with those two components.
So I've always been curious about rum, right? You're owned by a rum company in Bacardi. Like what type of rum barrels do you all look for? Are they, extra aged rum, or
Yep.
like what are you all looking for to get the profile? Because consistency's got to be really big for this giant release that you
Yeah.
have every day in the 95.5.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, kind of two different levels there for our standard stuff. I mean, yes, extra age. If we can get the 8-year, the 10-year rum barrels, we try to prioritize that regardless.
Yeah.
But those are more for our standard SKUs. And so one of the things I've done for the last couple of years is kind of piggyback off their special releases as well.
Yeah.
So they do a rotating Bacardi Ocho series, and they've had, I think they did a sherry, they did a Vino de Naranja, they did a rye, where you can imagine where those
Yeah.
barrels came from. And we actually got those barrels back too, which was neat. But yeah, so whenever they have a specialty dump, they know to phone me up first, hopefully. And those, I guess, in theory, could be blended into our everyday SKU. But I am trying to hold those to the side for releases such as this in the future.
Yeah. No, that's cool because like if you're not into rum, like it's a really good other spirit if you're a bourbon drinker to get into because of all the flavors are similar, but they a little bit obviously molasses and sugarcane give a different overall profile. But it's interesting to see how these kind of balance out. So I'm excited to try the deconstructed components because I liked the whole right, but trying a 6-year-old and then second maturation for 4-year-old is
Yeah.
I don't know, not something you get to do every day.
It's just about, I think it's the longest finish I've done in my career. So that's also a fun milestone to get to. But I also think both this and then the fall bourbon I keep referencing with a chunk of 3-year port finish kind of sets the stage of where I think we'll be going over the next, really just for our future.
So when it comes to aging something for 4 years or finishing for 4 years, are you going back and checking those consistently? Is it just part of your rotation?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say, I get asked this just kind of in the lifespan of a project, how sampling works. And normally we'll be sampling the base whiskey before we put it in the finishing cask.
Yep.
I'll kind of do a first check on the finishing cask a few months in. And then depending on what style it is, by that I mean like spirits or wine or double oaking, that kind of sets then how I'm going to sample it from there on. So with a spirits barrel, like with a rum barrel, I might sample it early on, and I might not sample it again for another 6 months or something. These ones I identified early on because honestly, if you're doing the math, they actually predate me going into the rum barrel because I'm at like 3.5 years here right now. So sampled them as I kind of got a handle on what some of our specialty inventory was. And then, we were probably going like a year in between sampling. But then as we decided we wanted to put this on the production track and make it a thing, then you start sampling it maybe every 2 or 3 months. And then it becomes every month and then becomes every other week, right? And actually, that's kind of brings us to the second component of the first one was great. I really like how big brown sugar molasses, as you might imagine, from a 4-year rum finish is. Some nice fruit character there as well. But I think you start to lose the rye spice, you start to lose a little bit of that base whiskey. And that's why across a lot of our projects, the tequila finish, notably from last year, we also blended in some older rye towards the end of the project. And so very similar on this. We really liked that base component, which ended up being about 70% of the blend. And the second component, the 12-year rye, ended up being, I think 31% was the final number because I'm a big believer that even when we hit these really long finishing times, you can't do that at the expense of the base whiskey.
Yeah.
And so I always want that base whiskey to be present, to have something to say, to be interplaying with your finishing cask and not just being covered up. And so that's why I like doing these blends of younger, older, longer, shorter finishing times, that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a really interesting because like the first one is like a candy bar, right? Like it's so candy oriented. We had a conversation going in the Discord the other day, like what pairs well with a candy or a savory or sweet treat.
Okay.
This would go with a sweet treat. Like you pick like this and pancakes.
Okay.
Would be awesome.
So you go sweet into sweet. I feel like, well, one, I have more of maybe it comes from more of my Scotch background, but I do both in whiskeys and in life kind of skew towards drier profiles.
Yeah.
As I put this out.
Yeah.
but I tend to, for me, I like, well, I guess maybe this is a good example of that. I like matching contrasts.
Yeah.
So spicy rye into rum. Obviously, that was conceptualized long before I got here with the base product. But I like those sort of catch people by surprise ideas. And so same with, not that I'm a food pairing expert, but I if I'm going to drink something sweet or eat something sweet, then usually I'm going like spicy for whatever is being paired with it.
Almost like it whenever you could just miss that it's a finished whiskey.
Yeah, we might have. Man, I can't remember what we talked about last time we've been on the show, but yeah, so that was the very first cast strength rye I put out was within my first year with the company. That was a Sauterne finished rye predominantly. And when that got reviewed, I think it was Fred Minnick. He was doing his, top 100, whatever, and he did a blind. And eh, I think his review after the fact was, I don't know if I would have even known that was finished.
Yeah.
And again, this was early on with my time with Angels Envy, and I sat there for a moment, was like, well, did I mess up? Like, if I did I not finish it correctly? And then the more I kind of internalized that, I was like, well, actually, if I'm matching and pairing my
Right.
base whiskeys and my finishing casks well enough that they integrate in flavor, then maybe that's a good thing. And I think maybe last time y'all were here, we were talking about the tequila finish. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And that was kind of a similar thought process of like layering the spice and the herbal character on each other in a way that maybe doesn't just punch you as tequila, but gradually builds between those two
You're like,
profiles.
it's there.
Yeah.
It's there, but it's not.
Sometimes you maybe have to go hunting for it, but like I also like making whiskeys where you can just knock back glasses and not think about it because it's
Yeah.
tasty and you're going through muscle memory.
Yeah.
Or if you want to just sit there and really think about it for a half hour or so, then I can hopefully provide that as well.
Well, so like that's the thing. Like the first one I think is that sit there, knock back, enjoy it. If you put that over, like if you sold that component like
Yeah.
over a cube, people would love it.
Sure.
But the 12-year-old, that's more sophisticated.
Mhm.
It's more nuanced.
More
It does,
oak for sure, more
yeah,
spice.
it does bring the tannin out, that
Mhm.
dryness,
Mhm.
which I think balances the full component of it all. I mean, if you like rye whiskey, I think this is an easy layup to like go and try to get a bottle.
Yeah, I think it also goes back to our cast strength bourbons. I mean, we'd only done cast strength bourbons before I got here, and then now cast strength rye is kind of starting to peak out here and there. I think the intention is not that we do them each and every year, but when I have something fun, when I have a really cool finishing cast to showcase that it sort of has as a through line to our everyday offerings, but can show kind of the most elegant, most grown up version of that. And in the case of our cast strength bourbon, it's more like taking the intensity up, right?
Yeah.
Because our core bourbon's 86.6 proof, a very light finish, usually second or third fill wine barrels at this point. And so it's really just ratcheting that intensity up. But this one, I would say, because our core rye is such a desserty, sweet release, that's kind of showing a more elegant, oak forward, rye forward, aged profile to associate with that.
Yeah, definitely. It's a balance of it all. And I think that it's really interesting when you go to extended age. I think, having your background in Scotch allows you all to kind of think through that, and how you put barrels back and how you can move them around to a cellar, quote unquote, right? Because you're going to have to
100%.
walk down. Like, can you walk through a little bit about how you all can keep a barrel in that second maturation for such a long period of time? Because I think that's got to be very hard for most American whiskey drinkers.
Love it, man. You're teeing me up perfectly. Yeah, so it's a combination. I kind of alluded to it with the bourbon. Multiple fills, right? Not in the case, this is all first fill rum barrels, just to be clear on the rye. But I would say the two kind of levers that I can pull most easily are how many fills on a barrel, and then where is that barrel being warehoused. We're lucky that we have both rick houses and palletized warehouses, so I kind of have access to each of those profiles, and then even within a rick house, the different levels of a rick house. And so there's been other projects where it's the opposite, where it's less about trying to do an extended maturation, more of like, oh man, we're not getting enough character out of these barrels, and what do? We go what I call roast them.
Yeah.
We'll stick them up in the very top of the rick house and just burn them, right? Because we're trying to juice as much flavor. And this is more the opposite. Palletized warehouses in general, less fluctuations than you see in a rick house, less airflow, or the bottom levels of a rick house as well, right?
Yeah.
Just less seasonal variance. And so that's one lever. All these rum barrels sat palletized the entire time, even though they were first fill. And then with the bourbon, up until I got here, it had only been first fill port barrels, which makes sense, right? I mean, you have higher proof, older bourbon, more oak. And so same kind of conversation, you're turning your finishing cask character up, and you want a fresh barrel to do so. But as we're moving into this more secondary maturation idea, that almost starts to fight, right? If you get long enough in a big red wine barrel, then those tannins start to fight your oak tannins. And so this past fall's bourbon that I keep referencing was about even split. I think it was maybe like 55% first fill, 45% second fill. And as you might imagine, that was the stuff with the longer finishing time. And so that was done purposefully, is take a less active active wine barrel, but then stretch it out further.
Mhm.
So it really goes back to that integration conversation we were having, where it's like, I don't need to throw as aggressive a flavor at it. I want long-term integration of flavors. And then I still have access to first fill port barrels to get it to where I want it.
Mhm.
With this, we're kind of on that same token, we're looking at another release of this down the line, and I'm actually looking at second fill rum barrels to make up, again, maybe up to half of it even.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important, right? But also, like from a barrel preservation perspective, if you all can stretch barrels
Totally.
2, 3, 4 times, that's a
totally.
big deal.
Yeah, and that's factoring in even in other products. Like, so as we go down the road with our triple oak product, which it's been out for what, a year and a half or so.
Phenomenal, by the way.
Initially was initially was second fill Hungarian barrels that were piggybacked from another product or project, I should say. But we were pretty adamant we're only using first fill French, and we're actually all the way over to third fill on it now, and kind of experimenting with even pulling that to a whole different product because we really like what the barrels continue to give.
Yeah.
So again, I think that's kind of more of a nod towards Scottish reuse of barrels. Obviously, our hands are tied for the first barrel, bourbon, rye, whatever, is only going to be a virgin barrel. But as a finished whiskey company, we have a lot of freedom with our finishing casks to do what we want to.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, because I don't think we've talked about the triple oak very much, but we had it at or Pig and Swig a couple months ago at 4th Street Live. And first of all, it was a one token pour, which was absolutely
Insane.
asinine. So
I like to deliver value to
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
It was.
so like, as a finished whiskey company, right? Like French oak is polarizing. I like French oak. Scott doesn't necessarily care
Yeah.
for it as much. Like, how do you balance those type of portfolios? Like, because I think it's really interesting because the world's at your fingertips
Mhm.
with what you can do as a finished whiskey company.
Yeah. Oh man. I am a proponent of French oak, but in ratio, because
Mhm.
man, that stuff is powerful. And we've learned some lessons there too. I mean, I'll give you an anecdote right off the rip. So the very first round of triple oak we did was about a 4-month finish for the French oak portion. That French oak portion was probably, I can't remember off the top, 20-25% of the blend. But those 4 months were from, I think it was December through April. Right? Not over oaking, like a really nice spice profile, baking spices, all the stuff you hear. We then filled more French oak barrels right around that time, April, May, going through the summer. And luckily, because we had them, we refilled those same barrels again, too, the French oaks we just had dumped. The first fill French oaks that were virgin that got filled in the summer were so off profile, like really good, actually, but so tannic, so oaky, so spicy, we couldn't use them in the next blend. The second fill ones that had been used in the first run still ended up darker, more oak forward and more spice forward than those same barrels had been on their on their first run. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that was the one that caught me by surprise, because I've always kind of ascribed to the idea that the barrel's like a tea bag. Like each time you're steeping it, you're getting less color, flavor, or even more like a blunt analogy. Sometimes I just say it's like a wet sponge that you're squeezing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess a summer is a harder squeeze, so to speak. So we learned some lessons there. And now, 18 months into it, we actually blend that product completely differently in the 3 months of summer than we do the other 9 months of the year.
Wow.
Because of just specifically the French oak is so temperamental in the summer and behaves so differently in the summer than it does fall, winter, spring. But I mean, you're seeing that in other products. The Sauterne one I referenced earlier had a small amount of French oak. One of the releases we're bottling we just finished bottling yesterday, has a degree of toasted French oak in it. So I view it more as like a salt and pepper component than I do something that I'm going to put a whole product on.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely fragrant.
Yeah.
So
it's fun. I mean, it gives it in chew. One way I reference it, it's like the body and the chew of the triple oak.
Yeah.
And even that's at 92 proof. So like when we look at playing with maybe doing some higher end variations of triple oak, I'm like, man, this is what's going to give me the coats your whole palate. I've almost called it like fudgy. Like it gives that chew is the best way I can put it.
Do you think it's just because it's going further into the wood in the summer? Is that
correct?
It's just hitting deeper points
100%.
into the wood and pulling out different sugars.
Absolutely. Different. I mean, your red line and your toasted kind of portion of it, and then even we have them charred. So absolutely.
Yeah, the toasted French oak.
Yeah,
I mean,
love a good toasted French oak. But okay, so now we're gonna get really nerdy because you went there and you started talking about it. So, but this is the stuff I feel like people don't understand, like blend and distillation. Like you got to think about this process end to end, right? And the barrel is very interesting, and we don't know we know a lot about it, but we don't know everything about the barrel, right? So as you think about the interactions, right? So obviously you can toast it, then char it. You can put it in different parts of the cask. Like, how do you all make sure that the barrel's not too temperamental for you all? Like, and like that it's gonna potentially give you the flavor profile, or is it just like we got to stay on top of this thing to make sure it does what we think it's going to do?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I would say I don't have a broad strokes answer. I'd say it's kind of project by project.
Yeah.
I may have said this last time we recorded, but in general, from a finishing cask perspective, I kind of break it into 3 categories, which are distilled spirits, fermented, predominantly wine for us, like 99% of what we use, but we're actually working on some beer barrel stuff at the moment as well. We did the ice cider release right before I got here. So fermented beverages and then double oaking, whether it's toasted or charred or whatever. And so those are kind of my 3 categories. And even with bottle and bond, and we've done some stuff with that now that's unfinished. It's for like our cask strength bourbons that are in port barrels. I feel very, very strongly we need to taste every single barrel that goes into that, because talk about temperamental wine barrels are it.
Yeah.
First fill wine barrel, you might come in, you might have vetted it with everything you got, like you nosed it, you tasted it after a month, and still you get some ones that go funky, or worse, sulfury, right? We probably all had a sulfury wine barrel finished whiskey or scotch. And so for certainly our very high-end products, those we got to taste every single one, I feel. And we'll do that over the course of months. Right? And we'll probably retaste it even. When it comes to a spirit barrel or a double oaked barrel, I'm much more comfortable saying, I tasted it once, it was good. We don't need to taste that one again. Or another way to look at it is tasting by lots, right? So we filled 30 rum barrels on this date with this same base whiskey. We filled 20 French oak barrels on this date with the same base whiskey. If I spot check 2 or 3 of those and they taste the same, they're roughly the same proof, they're in the same part of the warehouse, I'm not going to taste all 20, 30, 40, whatever it is. I'm going to extrapolate what I tasted there to the whole group. And those are much, as you might imagine, less time-intensive blending projects.
Yeah.
So it just depends. And again, parts of the warehouse, stuff that's been on a 5th, our top floors, 5th or 6th floors, just as far as the base bourbon goes, needs to be reassessed. Where if it's something on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, I'm more comfortable saying I tasted that a year ago, even though it's got another summer on it. It's I kind of got a grasp on what's going on there. Top floors are a little bit different, so I could go on. There is not a singular answer to that question.
Yeah, because I feel like that's the thing we don't know the most about, right? Is like what happens at all periods of time during the barrel.
Yeah, especially when you have 40 projects that are essentially being worked on with, maybe a 5 or even 10-year timeline. I mean, to your question of how do you sample or what frequency do you sample? It's just it's constant amongst all the projects, and you're trying to prioritize your palate and your time at any given moment.
But the wine barrels are the finicky ones that we got to keep an eye on.
Which funny, as essentially, what do? We do a wine finished bourbon. Like that is the trenches that I'm fighting in all the time. Granted, I will say once you're on your 2nd or 3rd fill, like if we get a skunky or bad port barrel, it's kicked out of the program.
Yeah.
And so that's more a pain in the ass when it comes to our cask strength projects and our single barrel program.
Yeah.
Single barrel program takes a ton of intensive tasting. We have a whole department that's really over that. But once it's been bottled as a single barrel, once it's been dumped as a cask strength component, then a 2nd fill or 3rd fill on it, we don't need to have that same level of rigor to it.
Yeah. So as you all think about, your next 20, 30 projects, because I feel like you're always going
with all these bottles.
Yeah.
Like if this is what a master distiller's room looks like as they're like blending and figuring things out.
Yeah.
Kind of what's next, like not to give anything specific away, but like what's the kind of the process for the release calendar that looks like for Angel's Envy?
Yep. So I guess most recently the second piece of this tasting was the cask strength bourbon. So I guess covering that just real quickly, I mentioned we dropped the age statement on it, but it ended up being almost 80% our own distillate.
Oh, cool.
I think is a great mark to be moving towards.
Yeah.
Is moving towards 100%. But as you might imagine, that was just some 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old of that, and then we blended in some 12 and so on and so forth, and that's the percent that's not our own. But what we leaned into that was called more of a Cellar inspired process, or even internally I've called it like a pseudo Cellar.
Yeah.
Where basically any given cask strength we're really more dumping like 120 barrels or so, even though we're bottling about 100 of that, and then we recast the 20. Right. And so every year we actually end up with 20 more barrels than we need, and that gets rolled over to the next year. And so even though we're taking the age statement off, I'm really kind of emphasizing that process, because I think it ended up being, well, I have it in front of me. It ended up being almost 40% past batches.
Oh, cool.
Right. So that's kind of, at least want to emphasize, that's where the craftsmanship lies, is that repeated marrying and blending of batches year over year over year. And so one way I put it on the double release is that, look, clearly the rye is going to be the time. If the rye is time, then bourbon is technique. So time and technique on that. And I think then to actually more accurately answer your question, then you'll see that kind of convergence of the fall one, which was age stated, again, up to 3-year finishing time in port. And you'll see us get to the age statements using our own stuff. And again, I always like to say, like, I've been with the company for 3.5 years. I've never actually put any of the stuff I've overseen on distillation into a bottle, nor will I for years on the line. So like, I'm very much a blender for the company to date. And so I think seeing that, it's like, look, I didn't distill the first barrels off the still here, and I didn't distill anything distilled in Indiana and so on and blah, blah, blah. So these are all the barrels in my inventory are just tools that I have to make the whiskeys that I want to make. But I think you will see the fall bourbon and then the current one that just came out sort of reach a point in the next few years where they hit each other. And I'm pretty excited to get to there. More immediate, again, because I did kind of allude to it, we just bottled back-to-back special releases, which thankfully will allow me to hopefully disappear into the background for some amount of time. But they won't release until our next distillery release, which, again, not so much of a teaser. Like, what did we bring down to KBF last year was our distillery releases. So I think,
which was a peated finish whiskey and the 2 grain.
Correct.
Which was, well, both were a lot of fun.
So I think that's the type of God, I'm going to say this, the type of energy I want to bring to our distillery series is just a little bit more experimental, not hopefully so out of the pocket that people freak out, but like just something that catches you a little off guard and hopefully subverts expectations. And also then the quality of the whiskey's good. So that is literally being bottled downstairs as we speak. The one that'll be followed up for this September. And then we also got our next Cellar series in bottle, basically the follow-up to the tequila finish rye that we were speaking of. And that'll be out looking a little bit, maybe a month after that, a little bit later into fall.
October-ish.
So I guess to put a pin in it, is we've sort of danced around it this whole time, but you're seeing a flip in our production schedule, right? We talked about a fall cask strength bourbon, but now we're just talking about the spring releases. So this year marks kind of the flip where our cask strength releases will now come out around Derby time every year. And then our more experimental Cellar series stuff will come out in the fall, where, everybody else is also releasing their special stuff. So I think it'll give it a little bit more pop in the fall, and then in the spring, the more stalwart ones that are on their 15th year of releases, that sort of thing. You can just know that you can look forward to seeing those around them.
No, that's it's exciting because we can see what the barrels do look like, or the bottles do look like as we sit here. We can't say it aloud, but I think people are going to be excited about that one, because the Cellar collection, I think what it's finished in is hot right now.
Which is funny, man. This has happened over and over again, where like I'm working on something for years, and then when I release, either for good or bad, it's like, well, it's trending or everybody's doing it. So even the tequila finish one, I did almost a year and a half finishing those barrels, and I had done multiple tequila finishes during my time in Colorado, because my parent company was Cuervo, right? So I had lots of experimental abilities there, and so when we released it, it was the second project I put down with Angel's Envy, was the Extra Añejo tequila. Again, almost 18 months later, and then even past that from bottling time, and then within weeks of launching it, 2 other tequila finishes came out. I think I'm sure I said that maybe on the show last time. So I'm like, and they were, their finishing times were like 6 months or something. I was like, well, damn it, should I have moved things up again? Part of me just thinks we're all kind of looking at the same white spaces targeting that. But this one, the one we're talking about, is more of a flavor profile standpoint. And it's funny because we're also doing some cocktails involving that flavor. And my brand team had done all, these consumer studies, and we're like, okay, we think we can hit more of a, accessibility in summer or whatever. And I was like, oh, that flavor you're talking about, I have 150 of that type of barrel in my warehouse that have been there for a year. So that's more of the happy accident side. And I don't anticipate, this one's a little bit more unique than even a tequila barrel. So I don't anticipate other people exactly hammering it at the same time. But even I'll go one more. The age statement ones, right? Like I identified the rum barrels pretty early on. Even the fall bourbon release were some of the first port barrels that I filled with the intention that they would go years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, great. We're going to get our first age statements out. This will be awesome. And then what happens? The whole industry slows down to some degree. All these age statements come back or increase and whatever. I was like, what the, like, I've been working on this for years. You got to believe me. But at least with ours kind of encompassing the finishing time, it still felt like we still had a conversation to have about it, and we're doing it differently than others.
Yeah, it was definitely unique, but that's exciting, and we'll report back.
We're gonna pour some off air.
Yeah.
I guess the one teaser I give there is that we found the tequila one was conceptually harder for people to wrap around. And I mean, they get it, right? But they'd think tequila and they think shooting Blanco. They'd see rye, they think spicy rye, and they'd be like, oh, I don't know about that. And as soon as they tried it, then it was like, oh shit, this is more about the honeys and the agave and the herbal and the spice and the sweet. So that one truly, I think, has been get people to taste it to believe. And this one that we just got done bottling is almost the opposite. I'm like, you read it off on a label, and I think people are like, yeah, I want that one.
Yeah.
And I think the liquid delivers on it too. So I'm expecting it to be a fun one for the fall.
Yeah, it's cool. And I do like the Cellar Collection bottle, how it's just a bit different with the ribbed kind of more Art Deco
Ripple
style.
Neck, yeah. And even the cask strength, that got the wings embossed in the front now. So I think it's kind of me talking about the liquid sort of haloing back to some of the cores. It's nice to see the bottles maintain the unique shape and visibility, but then even take them a little bit more elegant. And I guess this is probably a good time for me to plug that the two cask strengths that we just released, or the first time the boxes came back as well, so people can stop bothering me about that. Because from the moment I've walked in the door, they're like, oh, the boxes are being taken away. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to just get trotted out on a stage and had vegetables thrown at me and stuff. But that was actually one of the reasons why we did the double release off the start, because I was like, well, let me at least bring another whiskey out anyway. But so anyway, 3 years later, the boxes are back now. They're not the big wooden ones, but I think they have a ton of pop to them. They're really well made, and our packaging team did a nice job on it.
But I think the new marketing material with the flip up and open up is very nice.
Yeah, so that's a nice one, kind of a full circle one to get back around to. And even the one we're talking about for the fall is like the color on that box is going to pop. It's going to be neat.
Yeah, we can see it here. Scott may have been looking at it pretty much the entire time we've done the podcast.
Yeah, staring.
Got any more hard-hitting questions for Owen?
That's what I'm here for.
Hard-hitting journalism.
Yeah, that's what. Don't you know? That's why people subscribe to the Bourbon Lens.
We're like teasing and breaking news without breaking news.
Yeah,
I think this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, and I mean, keep doing what you're doing, but go be a father for a couple weeks.
Yeah,
it's gonna be awesome.
Enjoy that time.
We'll see. Maybe we can meet up for a game at some point in the next couple of months.
Definitely. Well, Owen, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. If you want more exclusive content, go over to patreon.com/Bourbon Lens and join our growing community. If you just want to stay friendly with us, you can go over to Instagram, X, and Facebook and follow us there. Also, our YouTube page is growing and we're producing more content there, like Thursday Thoughts and 5-Minute Fridays. So don't forget to smash the subscribe button and catch all the content that we are producing every week. And until next time, cheers.